Welcome back to Read It and Eat, and I'm here today to talk to you about Unreasonable Hospitality. This is a 2023 release, and this is by Will Guidarda. So, before I go into the depths of this book, I have to talk about why I was inspired to pick this book up in general. So please indulge me while I talk to you about Season 2 of FX The Bear. So if you don't know about The Bear is a story of a young, up-and-coming chef in the haute cuisine world who takes over his brother's failing beef shop in Chicago after he dies by suicide. So Carmy is our lead, and in Season 1, it is all about Carmy coming into this space that he's inherited from his brother. This beef shop that makes hot beef sandwiches that has a lot of problems. I fully recommend that you watch this show, and I did a review on Season 1 on my channel already that I'll link above and down below. So I won't go into too much detail of Season 1. In June, we were graced with Season 2 of The Bear, with 10 episodes that brought us back to the beef, which is now being transformed into a haute cuisine place known as The Bear, thus the name of the show. And throughout this season, the second season really gives you an opportunity to learn more about the supporting characters around Carmy. In Season 2 of The Bear, the writers do a really good job of developing the supporting characters around Carmy. One of them being, and my favorite character being, Richie, cousin. Richie was best friends with Carmy's older brother, Michael, and Richie is struggling to find his place in this new high-end world that Carmy is creating. We learn, finds his life, he's a little purposeless in this way. He never wanted to be in this restaurant industry, but really got caught up when he was trying to raise his daughter and never really was able to find what his purpose was. In Season 2, Carmy sends Richie away from The Bear to go study under a high-end restaurant and stage for a week. Now, this restaurant is never described by name, but because it's in Chicago, we can say that some of the inspiration most likely came from Alinea, which is ran by Grant Achatz, which is one of the top restaurants in the country, if not the entire world. Within Richie's episode specifically, though, Richie is staging. What staging means is that you spend time in another restaurant and you work there for free, and it's meant to be an educational thing. Usually you see young chefs in culinary school working in stages for free. Stages are like unpaid internships, but you will find even the most esteemed chefs will do stages to keep their craft up to skill. We actually see other chefs within The Bear do stages in Copenhagen and learning through others. Richie's is different. Richie is learning front of house. He is learning the importance of the front of the house is equally as important as the back of the house, which is Carmy's domain. And up until this point in the show, I had noticed that they're working up to the opening of this restaurant, and I noticed that no one was talking about front of house, and I thought to myself, that might be the space where Richie ends up, because Richie knows everyone who knows everyone at the beef. He knew everybody, so I knew he had that trait in him, but it just needed to be polished and refined for this Michelin restaurant, haute cuisine restaurant that Carmy and Sydney are working towards. And it's in this episode we start to see at the beginning, Richie is not very impressed. He's polishing forks, and the other maitre d' and the other front of house staff tell him to shine them better, to do it better, because it matters. And it really sparks this moment of respect for Richie, and you start to see him develop and really come into his own throughout the episode. It's a really great episode. The character development is astounding, and one of the best lines of dialogue comes later when Richie is reunited with the rest of the staff at The Bear, when he comes in suits, and his perfect line of dialogue is, "I wear suits now." And it's just really about self-respect for Richie, and it's a huge moment for the character. The actor is nominated for the Emmy for Best Supporting Actor for this role, and it's so well deserved. I really hope that he wins it. It's just a great transformation. But back to the book. Why are we talking about Unreasonable Hospitality? It is because in that episode, where Richie goes through this montage moment, the turning point, where the light bulb goes off. This is the book that we see Richie reading in his home. So first I should mention, it's already all over the internet that Carmy has a very developed bookshelf in his office of different cookbooks throughout the world. Food and Wine went deep diving into listing every single book on that shelf, which I'll link that article because I was about to start the daunting task of filming that video, and thankfully someone beat me to it. But this is the only book we see Richie reading. And I think it's important to talk about the role of hospitality and front of house within the restaurant world. Before I started on Booktube, one of the first nonfiction books I ever read was called Waiter Rant, and it was at the time anonymous, and it was about this man's 20 plus year history as a waiter in New York City. And I continue to read about this world, but it was that book that sparked my interest. I'll have a separate video with other recommendations of other front of house restaurant related books to read, but first, The Unreasonable Hospitality. So Unreasonable Hospitality, the remarkable power of giving people more than they expect. So who is Will Guiarda? So I hope I'm saying his last name right. Will Guiarda has worked in the restaurant industry for more than 20 years, and he worked at 11 Madison Park. So let me first start by reading the inside for you. Chefs at the finest restaurants in the world had long been celebrated about being unreasonable about the food they served. At 11 Madison Park, they set out to discover what could happen if they were just as unreasonable about how they made people feel. So legendary restaurant 11 Park Madison became iconic for delivering extraordinary hospitality through its relentless, skillful campaign to spread joy. This is quoted by Pete Wells, the former restaurant critic of the New York Times. Now, Unreasonable Hospitality shares that philosophy with leaders from all industries seeking to elevate ordinary transactions into unforgettable experiences. So when Will Guiarda took over 11 Park Madison, 11 Park Madison was a struggling 2-star brasserie. 11 years later, it had 4 stars from the New York Times, 3 Michelin stars, and had been named the best restaurant in the world. So how did Guiarda and his team pull off this unprecedented transformation? By offering hospitality that was so memorable, so over the top, it can only be described as unreasonable. This book is very much a love letter about the front of house. And you see beats of this philosophy throughout the entire episode. Think back to Richie and polishing spoons and forks. At the beginning, he didn't see the point, and it's within Will's philosophy that every element of the front of house should be treated with a level of respect and dignity, and that what you are doing matters. We later see in this episode that Richie overhears a family lamenting that they didn't get to try Chicago deep dish pizza while in town. And then the scene cuts to Richie bringing this information to the back of house, explaining this, and then you see him sprinting down the street to go buy deep dish pizza to make a magical, unreasonably awesome moment for this family. A summation of this book in such simple words is it's about going above and beyond what people expect of you. It is often not that the food is the best food in the world, but it's the whole experience around the moment. And everything from looking at reservations and knowing someone's birthday is this week for your guest, or maybe they're celebrating a very important anniversary. And they talk about moments of keeping track of people in their computer systems of guests who come back every year to celebrate at 11 Park Madison, and how that the extra touch point, whether it's paying for the valet, packing up a to-go box of something special, or giving a couple a private moment, those unreasonable moments that go so above and beyond are what make this book a really fantastic read. I really enjoyed Will's self-described neurotic passion about the front of house. Whether it's the linen choice to the direction of those forks, every single element is thought about. And I have a lot of respect for that. If a chef is going to dedicate money and resources to finding the best ingredients in the world, Will is going to dedicate money and resources to not just the best end linens to make it seem superfluous or haughty, but we'll spend every dollar to make moments magical while still balancing, and he really emphasizes this in later chapters, the spreadsheet and making sure his costs were on target all the time so that he had this fund to create these magical moments. Now, 11 Park Madison is the best restaurant in the world, so the budget's probably a little bit different than the local restaurant down the street. But what Will is trying to convey throughout the book is that if you took even some of these practices to go above and beyond in other areas of the world or in jobs and employment, you would also have much more loyal customers and stronger customer service. He uses and takes his ideals and applies it to being a car salesman. If you know someone's coming in to buy a car and they know that there's a baby on the way, maybe you're going to show them a car and sell the car, but you're going to throw in a baby seat for the back. You're creating this above and beyond moment, but will bloom into some kind of lifelong loyalty. I listened to the book because Will narrated it himself. Fun fact, he's actually also married to Christina Tozzi of the Milk Bar Phenomena, which was also a really fun nod because I know and read about Christina and I've read about Milk Bar, and I'm like, hey, that's the husband. It's a really amazing book, but I do challenge, I guess, one thing I walked away from, and it's not Will's fault or his problem to solve. But in a world, I have only experienced one Michelin star restaurant in my life. When I moved to Chicago with my husband, he was then my boyfriend, I had just been offered and moved across the country for this amazing job opportunity, and I wanted to celebrate. And we went to Alinea, and it was a magical moment. And a lot of this, I'd say, methodology, ideology was in the space. We had talked about in our reservation that it was my birthday and our upcoming anniversary, and they did provide an extra part of the desserts course that involved an edible balloon. It actually floated, it was full of helium, but you could eat the balloon, and it was made out of something apple related, and it was such a really cool experience. So yes, does a Michelin star restaurant have the ability to convey this unreasonable hospitality? Absolutely. But I don't know if anyone else has experienced it in this modern day, this day and age. I find the reservation system abysmal right now. So a lot of restaurants have moved to Resy, this online platform where you can reserve a reservation. Sorry, it's a little obvious, but a reservation. And I find that these large Michelin star restaurants, they only book out 3 months in advance, and then within 2 minutes of that window opening, all of the reservations are gone. It doesn't matter what day of the week it is, what time, or how many people in your party, all the reservations are booked. So how am I supposed to experience as a consumer, as a guest? How am I supposed to experience this unreasonable hospitality if I can't even get my foot in the door? And I want to challenge, like, this is a great book, and the episode within The Bear is amazing. But how are we going to fix that fundamental problem? Because I find now that even if I call to ask 6 to 8 months in advance for a reservation, they say that you have to use Resy, you have to use this online system. Well, I don't know about you, I am not from a lot of money, so I might be saving a year in advance before I can go on a trip. And if I'm going on a trip, I want to book a dinner reservation. But if they're going to only let me do that 3 months before my trip, do you see the chicken and egg and how absolutely discouraging that can be? For me, it's so frustrating, and I'm more than willing to spend the money to experience unreasonable hospitality and phenomenal food. But if I can't even get through a reservation system that works, like, what does that say about hospitality? I understand a very high in demand restaurant probably gets calls all the time, but I feel like there's a level of humanness that's disappearing because I can't get a hold of anyone to make a reservation. I would book an entire trip around going to New York City if it meant I could get a reservation at 11 Park Madison, but I don't know their reservation system specifically. I just mean in general, how do I plan a trip around a restaurant I've dreamed about going if I can't get a reservation because of an online ticketing platform? It reminds me of Ticketmaster. So it just feels so scummy, and I'm so stuck. So all in all, this is a great book. It perfectly takes the beats of the episode of The Bear, or The Bear takes beats from the book, I should say, since the book came first. And I really enjoyed that. I just wonder what the next step is and how we're going to continue to have unreasonable hospitality if right now there's still this pretty big pain point about reservation systems. But that is just my opinion, and I would love to feel and hear your opinion down in the comments below. When was the last time you went to a restaurant and had the best hospitality experience? What was one that let you down? And what do you think about unreasonable hospitality? Is it fair to expect that every restaurant runs down the streets to get you deep dish pizza? No, but what do you think about that ideology of just going a little bit above and beyond to create magical moments? I would love to hear from you in the comments below. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe. I'll link out to this book, The Bear, and my review from last year, along with that Food and Wine article I mentioned where they break down Carmi's bookshelves. I hope you're well. I'll see you in the next one.